Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. This video is sponsored by Big Mountain Studio. This website is run by my friend Mark and he has written some amazing books on SwiftUI. You can see books related to SwiftUI Views Mastery, SwiftUI Animation, Working with Data, and even Combine. If you're interested in buying these books, check out the links in the description. These are very interactive, very cool books. And you should definitely get these if you want to master any of the topics related to SwiftUI. Check out the links in the YouTube description. In this video, we'll be creating a very simple to-do list application using core data. And we will also be checking out how to use the section fetch request, which is a new property wrapper that has been added for SwiftUI. Now, I will not be using MVVM pattern or any pattern. I'll just show you how you can get started with core data when you are using SwiftUI. If you're interested in learning about how to use MVVM pattern with core data, then check out my other videos. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and add a model file. This will be our core data model. And I will go ahead and name this to-do model. Okay, the model doesn't really have anything right now, so we should probably enter an entity. I'm going to go ahead and name this entity as task. And now I can go ahead and add different properties or attributes related to the entity. The first attribute I'm going to add will be title. This will be string. And I also want to make sure that the title is not optional. So we'll make sure that this is not checked. Next up is whether the task is completed or not. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a field called is completed. And we will make sure this is Boolean. In this case, this is also not really optional, but it can have a default value. And the default value will be no. This means when you create a task, by default it will be no. You have not completed the task. Next up, I can go ahead and add date created, and we can use it if you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and set it to date time, which is right there. And this is also not optional, so you must provide date time. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay, everything looks fine. The next thing we want to do is we want to create our core data manager, which will be responsible for initializing the view context, initializing the whole core data stack. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file, and I will simply call this core data manager. Once again, keep in mind, we are not using MVVM design pattern. We're just trying to see how to work with core data right directly from the view, and we will be using a section fetch request also. The first thing I'm going to do is import core data. Next, I will create a class called core data manager. I will create the property for persistent container. And I want to create a singleton, so whenever you're trying to access the core data manager, we'll just return you the same exact instance. So we'll go ahead and create a static property and initialize core data manager. Currently, the core data manager does not really have any initializer or init. So let's go ahead and add that. Next, we can go ahead and initialize our NS persistent container, passing in the name, which is to-do model. And finally, we can go ahead and load the persistent store. This is going to give us the idea or set it up. And if there is any problem, then, well, there's nothing really we can do. We can simply say core data failed to initialize. And we can even display the error message. For outside world, I can also create a view context. And the reason that I'm creating the view context is that anyone can use the core data manager to access the view context. They can actually access it using the persistent container, but I have made sure that this property is actually private. So this is our core data manager that's been created. We can use this core data manager into our app file. So let's go ahead and create an instance of the core data manager. And we want to inject it directly into the environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and inject to the key path manage object context. And now I can inject the view context. I'm also going to add one more line. This is nothing to do with core data, but this is going to allow us to ignore the constraint-based errors that you will be seeing in the console. So now those errors will be silenced. Nothing to do with core data. This line has nothing to do with core data. Okay, let's go back to our content view. Currently, you can see the content view and it looks fine. But it doesn't really, we don't really have much going on in the content view. So let's go ahead and remove this part. We're going to go ahead and add a VStack. Our page is just, this app is just one page long, but we'll still use the navigation view. There we go. We can select all of this, Control I, to format it a little bit better. We can also go ahead and add a bunch of our navigation title if I want to. So we'll go ahead and add that later. All right. What else do we need? Well, we need obviously a text box or a text field. For that, I'm going to go ahead and first create a state property. So whenever you're typing something, it's going to go inside. It's going to get populated in the title property. I'm going to use the text field. We can write the title, and we can pass in the title over here. Let's see how this actually looks like. You'll see that on the right-hand side, text field is getting displayed, but it's kind of like in the middle right now. And also, we don't really have any title or navigation title. I can go ahead and add that. I can just say task, or you can say anything you want. Text field style, you can also change that to be rounded border. And we can hook it up to the onSubmit, meaning whenever you press a button, like a return key, we will fire this function. Another thing we need to do is add a bit of a padding. So let's go ahead and add a padding a little bit. And now it looks much better. So text box or text field is fine, but we also want to eventually display our items. But what goes when you actually save a particular task? Over here, we can actually create an object of the task. The task entity, the class, is automatically created using core data. And the reason it's automatically created is that if you go to the to-do model and click on the entity, you will be able to see, if you select the entity, there we go, code generation is actually saying class definition. So the classes are automatically being created. So that's how we are getting access to the task class. In order to create a task object and making sure that it is part of some view context, we need to inject the view context. If you remember correctly, in the simple to-do app file, we actually injected the view context as an environment variable. And it will be available in our content view. So we can go ahead back to the content view and we can try to access it. Environment, manage object or manage object context, and we're going to get the view context. This is a view context that we can now pass right here to create our task object and making sure that that task object is actually using the view context. We can go ahead and also set the title, which will be coming from the title property. And then we can also go ahead and set the date created, which can be today's date. And finally, we can call the save function, which we don't really have. After the save function, we're going to set the title to be empty. The save function responsibility is to save your view context. So I'm going to go ahead and implement the save function. I'm going to say view context dot save. But you can see that the save function is a throwable function, which means that you need to call it with a try or try exclamation mark or try optional. I'm just going to do the whole thing and wrap this with the do catch. So if there is any error that is being thrown, we will simply catch it and we will display it. And that is pretty much it. Now it is going to save it into SQLite through the use of core data, but right now we don't really have any idea of how to display it. One thing you have to keep in mind is that whenever we are saving a task has a couple of different things associated with it, a couple of attributes. We have the title of the task, which can be mow the lawn, feed the dog, clean the car, clean the dishes. We have the date, which we are assigning, which is today's date. And we have it's completed, which means that whether the task is completed or it is not complete, true or false. By default, when a task is created, is complete is always false. What we want to do is we want to create multiple sections in our application. We want to create one section where we will show the pending task, and we want to show another section where we will show the completed task. We can actually do that using our fetch request, but with the sections fetch request. Let's go ahead and create that. We will use the property wrapper, which is at fetch request. Now we have to provide that on what basis you are grouping them. What will be the data type of that particular field or attribute? Well, in our case, it will be Boolean. And the reason it will be Boolean is because in our model, in our entities, is completed is the one that we are trying to use. And we're trying to say that if it is completed, like if it's true, then batch them together, group them together. And if it is completed with false, then group those ones together. So Boolean. The item that we're going to get back will obviously be task. Next, we need to provide a section identifier. This is where you will say that, okay, it's going to be which field. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it's completed. And we also have to say that the sort descriptors, if you are going to sort them or not. Right now, we're just not going to sort them. We're just going to go ahead and get our sections. So this will be group sections or sections, whatever you want to call them. Okay, now we can go ahead and try to see if we can display them. I'm going to use a list, and inside the list, I'm going to go over each of these task sections, keeping in mind that these are sections. Now, inside the section, we will go ahead and create something. We will create probably a section. So let's go first get access to a task section, one of the sections. We will create a section, and you can see that we have many different kind of overloads. I'm going to use the first one, which means the content, which I'll just say content, and the header. Now the question is, what will go in the header? What do you want to display in the header? Well, the good thing is that each section has an ID associated with it. And this ID will be the value of the isCompleted property. So it will either be the true or false. If it is true, meaning basically the task is completed, then we will simply return completed. Else we will return pending. All right. Let's go ahead and run the application and see what it actually displays us. We're going to launch the application in our simulator. Okay, there we go. And in our simulator right now, we don't really have any tasks. So I'm just going to go ahead and add one of the tasks. I'm going to say mow the lawn and enter. And you can see that it's put inside the pending section. All right. And if I add something else, let's say clean the car, well, right now it's not really doing anything. Kind of weird, right? So a couple of different things we need to find out. Well, first of all, we need to find out we need to display the items. We are not even displaying the item. We are just displaying the section. So we need to figure out how to display all the items too, which is within each section. So once we are done with this section, you can see that it's displaying a text value, which is simply content. We can actually now go inside each section. So we can iterate through each section, get the item of the section. And now we should be able to display the whatever we need. Like maybe if we want to display the title of that particular item, we can display those. This will be the actual value, like mow the grass or mow the lawn and clean the car and all that stuff. If I want to remove this accordion kind of a control, I should be able to simply make sure that this particular list style is actually plain. There we go. Much nicer, depending on if you want that or not. All right. So this is actually going pretty good. We have added our code that will display all the pending tasks. The other thing that we want to do is with each of the element that we are creating and displaying the title, we want to display a checkbox also. So I'm just going to go ahead and going to wrap this in a horizontal stack. And the first item, I'm just going to go ahead and put as a system name, and we can call it square. If I run this, you'll see what happens. And there we go. We got two checkboxes being displayed, which is basically a square. And if I add a new item, right, let's say feed the dog, everything is going inside pending. It's already grouped together as pending because all of these tasks have is completed to false. There is no task that is completed true. I would like to make sure that I can check mark these. This means that I should be able to tap on that particular image. If I tap on the image, I already have access to the item. I can simply say is completed.toggle. If it's completed, make sure it's incomplete. If it's not complete, make sure it's complete. And then obviously save it also. Whenever the item is toggling, I would also like to change whether we want to display an empty checkbox or a filled checkbox. So I can go ahead and say it's completed. If it's completed, then I do want to display a checkmark dot square. Else, I want to just display an empty square. Now I'm going to say mow the lawn, and automatically you can see the completed is filled out and the section header is completed. If I say clean the car, everything is just moving on its own. And I can uncheck and check all the time. I mean, this is kind of crazy that we are able to do all of these things with just the small amount of code that we have written. One other thing that I want to do is I want to show my pending task on the top and my completed task on the bottom. We can do that by using sort descriptors. You can see that right now in the sort descriptors, we are not really passing anything. So let's go ahead and pass something. Sort descriptor, and then we should be able to pass in a key path. Over here, I'm just going to use sort with is completed. And there we go. So now you can see that the pending tasks are on the top. If I go ahead and do something, let's say do grocery, it automatically gets added to the pending, and now I can move the task between the two lists. Another thing that I want to add is ability to delete a particular task. Let's go down to the items for each that we are running, which is right over here. On this item for each, I can go ahead and say on delete. We will get the index set. Now, this can become a little bit complicated because the first thing we need to do is to get the section, and then from the section we can get the particular task. So let's go ahead and get the section. We will go ahead and convert this particular section into a sections array. All right. We will call it sections. Now I can go ahead and go through the index set. I will able to get the actual task just passing in the index. And then I can go ahead and delete it. View context.delete that particular task. Finally, I would like to save it. So just calling it the save function. Perfect. Let's go ahead and run this. Now if I swipe, you can see the delete button automatically appears. If I go ahead and delete, it just simply deletes. I can go ahead and also add new task. I will be able to check mark, and as soon as I perform a check mark, it goes to a different section. And there you have it. We have now created a complete application that allows you to add a task, update a task, delete a task, list the task also in sections, all using core data and all using the sections fetch request feature. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my Udemy courses. I have a lot of different courses with iOS development. You can see MVVM design pattern. This is the highest rated course. If you are trying to learn core data, I have a course on core data also. You can find the links right there in the description, which will take you to the same page, which is my page for all the different courses that I have. So definitely check out my courses and hope you really enjoy these courses.